Hi, I'm Samir Jain. I'm going to share with you my impressions on what's happening in France and its wider ambitions. So we know that in 2017, Macron was elected president in France on a very clear pro-European platform with the intention of reclaiming a strong international role for France. We know that in France, foreign policy is central to national identity, and the president, of course, has extensive authority on defense matters. Also, another great trait is independence is a traditional French foreign policy virtue and has been a characteristic of pretty much every French leader and presidential candidate since Charles de Gaulle. So, contrary to the Euroscepticism adopted by many European politicians these days, Macron optimistically articulates a role for France and Europe that enhances rather than reduces its sovereignty. In his view, there is no question that the EU needs reform, and France aims at returning to the forefront not just of Europe but rather of global affairs. Macron does not spend much time on the soft foreign policy issues that are trendy on the center left, such as global governance, development assistance. Rather, his background is in economic issues, and he's relatively inexperienced, of course. He's increasingly placed an emphasis on security and articulated a willingness to act forcefully abroad to defend French interests. These days, consolidating the new momentum in Europe is France's key priority. The question is, what sort of union does it want? And more important, what sort of a union will its partners be prepared to accept? And what sort of reform could bring in the new Europe that we are all dreaming of? So with Brexit uncertainties and several other roadblocks to be overcome, nothing is very clear, at least not to me. It seems that for France, this is not just about tackling the European Union's internal challenges, and there are many challenges. I think that a European renewal should also help it to assert its own views and interests in the global stage. And in Macron's vision, this new European impetus needs to be externally directed, to be an extrovert. Hence, France's renewed ambition against the global backdrop of us in the United States retreating and an increasingly assertive China and also Russia. So their role is to act as the champion of multilateralism, and they believe here in France that Europe will be better off and in fact thrive if intrinsically global challenges such as terrorism, migration, climate change, cybersecurity, etc., are all tackled under a multilateral umbrella. So France's hopes for a more effective new multilateralism go far beyond security issues. France's hope is that the multilateral architecture is strong enough to resist the current assaults, including some from our own president, which will allow Europe to get its act together. Macron's initiatives even suggest that the plans that he has for international institutions to succeed in reforming themselves and take it in a direction that will make them more responsive, more effective, and closer to, which I read in an interview, a multilateralism that protects, to paraphrase one of his slogans. The worry, of course, is that something could trigger the demise of this multilateral order. In fact, if you read the local press, France's official assessment of the current international environment points to an unprecedented concentration of threats and opportunities. France is particularly concerned about the potential for proliferation in the context of international security. And of course, it's been very vocal. It's also vehemently opposed to US moves, which risk the unraveling, in their view, of the Iran nuclear deal. And Paris is closely following the situation in the Korean peninsula, which at least it sees as a serious risk. So here's where it gets interesting. Emmanuel Macron has not only campaigned as an unabashed pro-European, but he has placed Europe at the core of both his domestic and international agendas. And some of his key views are well known already. He's been a great advocate of a Eurozone budget that is managed by a Eurozone minister, and that is accountable to a Eurozone parliament. He has firm positions on Brexit, and the idea is to protect the remaining members, so I don't blame him. He's made it abundantly clear that he supports a much more flexible Europe. He also favors debt relief to places like Greece so as to keep Athens in the Eurozone. He suggested that he could support sanctions against Poland and Hungary in response to their breach of European values. This might be rhetoric too, I don't know. And he has shown interest in new ideas to further democratize European politics. So for Macron, Europe is indispensable to shape the international environment and not just to survive it. This guy has a vision of the world in which rapid change and ever denser interconnections are the only constants. And it comes for I imagine France has a proud history and a record of achievements, and it cannot simply shut itself off from the world and wish away the changes that are swirling around it. And also, of course, withdrawing from the world would contradict France's identity as a country with ambitions to shape the global arena. So now it must find a way to remain open and to thrive. And here's where I really believe that Macron's faith in France and in the value of openness will translate into a clear universalist message. He sees a France that is open to trade and investment, and it is open because it has the capacity to absorb and benefit from such flows and to enforce the rules of the world, of the road, and insist on reciprocity from its major partners. So more power to it. And lastly, even when it comes to refugees, which many in France sees as a burden, Macron sees as an economic opportunity both for France and for Europe. So this faith in open borders extends beyond economic arguments. He's also refused to close the door on Turkish membership in the EU. So once again, more power to him. Vive la France! I'll keep you posted on at least my own takeaways. Thank you so much for listening in. Bye bye.